I have very delirious, moments of memory within that. Basically, just the nurse, waking me up being like, how's your pain? And being like, awful, it's bad. Hey guys, welcome back to our channel, Pineapples and Snowflakes. I'm Melissa.
And I'm Dan, and this is part 2 of our epic saga of...
our ectopic pregnancy.
Yeah, so last time we left off, we had gotten methotrexate shots, and the ectopic pregnancy numbers were going down. And
yeah, the HCG when we left was 223. It seemed like we were out of the woods, and we were just kind of moving forward and looking for some closure.
My parents were in town. We were going out to dinner for their last night here in Kansas City, and Melissa had been having some weird pains in her stomach.
Yeah, well, almost, it came on so suddenly. We were at dinner, and all of a sudden I was just like, oh man, my lower right abdomen is really, hurting. But it still wasn't horrible, and at this point, we were so convinced that we were out of the woods, how on earth would anything be going wrong?
I mean, we were thinking, this shouldn't keep happening, but maybe it's just, a side effect or something. We weren't sure.
So, we ate dinner, we went home, and just kind of continued as normal, went to bed, and I got up and went to work the next day. I messaged Dan at some point during the day, and I said, it's still really hurting, having trouble sitting up all the way straight and taking full breaths. He was like, whoa. Why am I just hearing about how bad it is?
Right. I think you messaged me right when you were getting off work, and we were coming to pick you up, and the plan was to go to dinner. And actually, my parents were in town, her parents were coming into town, and we were going to meet before I took my parents to the airport. So I was like, okay, well, have you called anybody or anything? She's like, yeah, I'm waiting for a reply from my doctor. I'm like, okay, so...
Yeah, so I paged my doctor again just to see what her opinion was. But in the meantime, I figured, well, let's take his parents to the airport.
They had
my parents were driving through. And so, yeah, we all met for dinner at this place. And we had just ordered when my doctor called me back. And she was like, I definitely think you should go in. I'm going to call the hospital and tell the attending there what's going on. She wanted to specifically call and say, hey, she's coming in. Here's what's happening. To make sure they were kind of ready for my arrival.
She was really concerned. She didn't care that our HCG numbers were down really low in the 200s because you can still it can still burst at that range. It can burst at any time. And so she was like, if you're feeling pain like you are, you have to go in to the emergency room.
And then she goes, and don't stop and eat dinner before you go in. And
literally
just then, they're delivering our food, and I'm so hungry.
So she was going to eat. She's like, oh, I'll just eat. And my mom always has her mind on what could be. And so she said, well, what if it's surgery or something?
Yeah, what if they don't want you to eat because
Melissa
you have to have a procedure?
Drops her food, and she's like, yeah. So I had to take my parents to the airport. We split up. Your parents, who were just coming into town, took you to the emergency room hospital. And I'm driving as fast as I can legally and trying to get back there because I'm thinking they're going to just take her in for surgery and I'm not going to be there.
In retrospect, my parents were like, we really should have taken Dan's parents to the airport, and Dan should have probably taken Melissa to the hospital, but that's not how it turned out, and it's fine. I mean, I think you ladies know how it is. Sometimes you just need your mommy, no matter how old she gets.
It was really nice she was
I
there.
liked having my mom there. It was so lucky that they drove in that night. They had been here 30 minutes before I was like, hey, you want to take me to the ER? Doesn't that sound fun?
Yeah, so they went with you. You should probably tell this part because I wasn't there. I was at the airport.
Yeah. Well, we get there and, my mom is still eating her salad in the ER, and I go into triage and I'm explaining what happened. And at first they're really concerned because ectopics are really dangerous and you really don't mess around with an ectopic pregnancy. But then I'm like, oh, well, I got the methotrexate a couple weeks ago. And she was like, well, okay, if you got it that long ago, there's really probably nothing to worry about. But, she was like, so basically, I'm not going to put you to the top of the list, but I'll, put you at the middle of the list. just because of the nature of, what you came in for.
So I had plenty of time to drop my parents off, drive all the way back to the hospital.
Yeah,
hang
he's
out
still
with-
not here yet.
Right. There was no rush at this point.
Yeah.
It took like 2 hours, 3 hours maybe?
It was a lot of hours. I think, I think it was probably about 4 before I really like got back and saw someone.
Yeah, saw a person I knew.
And, as usual, they're having trouble like getting an IV in because they can't find a vein. And that was when she finally got it, it was in my left wrist, and I have seldom experienced pain like that. Like, I was coming up out of the seat and she's jamming it into the vein. Oh my gosh, it hurts so bad.
If I can just demonstrate really quick. This is Melissa's arm. The nurse or whoever doing it was like that, and I was just it made me freak out as I was watching it, and Melissa was just like spasming from the pain. Anyway, that was the worst I've ever seen.
Yeah, that was very painful. So anyway, they start giving me some pain meds, and then the doctors start coming in, and again we go through a very infuriating period of doctors they just wouldn't believe what I was telling them was going on. So they come in and they're like, well, I don't think it's your ectopic because you got the methotrexate a while and, your HCG was so low.
And again, we're like, are you sure? Because this can actually burst at any level. And they're like, yeah, we're pretty sure. So we're going to bring in a specialist, like a GI person.
Yeah, they're like, we think it's your ulcerative colitis. And I was like, I have ulcerative colitis, and this does not feel like ulcerative colitis. And then they say, oh, well, I think it could also be appendicitis. And they're like pushing around, and I mean, it's just like so silly. But they basically thought it was everything but an ectopic pregnancy. And I'm so hungry and so thirsty and so just cranky. Like, I'm like, hello, I know what's going on, and I'm in so much pain. And then they're giving me pain meds, and I was getting really nauseous from the pain meds. It was really terrible.
It was awful, and nothing got resolved that night. And finally, at like midnight or 1, they're moving her up to a room to stay in the hospital for observation or whatever.
For pain management. I mean, they want to run some tests and do some ultrasounds, but they're also admitting me overnight. My parents left. They finally got Dan a comfy chair. He just had basically like a little office chair looking thing, and I was like, that is not going to work. So they brought him a reclining chair. And we try to sleep as much as we can. But, for those of you who've been in the hospital, I mean, they wake you very frequently for tests and things like that, and to run your vitals. And
turning lights on and off.
Turn it every time you, just drift off, they come back in. So, yeah, it was a really long, exhausting night, and we still had no answers. And then at some point, really early morning, they decide to take me for an ultrasound. So we go to the ultrasound, and the nurse, again, did a transvaginal and a transabdominal ultrasound. And during the transabdominal, she says, and I quote, I mean, there's something kind of like junky in that ovary, but I don't know if that'll be of concern. And that's where she left it. And she is the last person who ever brought that up. Except for me. I kept being like, what about my junky ovary? Is anyone going to...
Is there something wrong with that one? Should we look into it? Maybe it's not appendicitis or my GI issues. But no one listened to her.
Yeah, so the gynecology team comes in and they say, oh, there's really nothing of concern. They page the GI team and they do an exam. And then they leave and then they decide, this isn't your ulcerative colitis.
They're like, no, we're out. This isn't us.
So they turf me back to the gynecology team. They come in and they say, if you really want to leave, you can. Or we can keep you another night for pain management. But, I don't think that we're going to want to run any more tests or anything. So they decide that, and then they come in. The nurse comes in, and she says the magic words. The nothing by mouth order has been lifted. Here is a giant glass of ice water, and here is a menu. You can order dinner. So I ordered an omelet, bacon, sausage, extra cheese. Oh my gosh, I was so excited. The nurse comes in and says, the nothing but mouth order, nothing by mouth, NPO, is back on your chart. have you eaten or drank anything? And I was like, yeah, remember that like 30-ounce water you brought me? I drank it all.
And I'm going to eat that omelet if it's in front of me.
Yeah, but she says, okay, you can't have anything else. That's it. So I'm very glad I got to have some water, but I'm still famished.
And she didn't tell you why.
She didn't tell me why, and in fact, she told me they didn't know why. They didn't know who had put that order back on my chart or why it had ended up there. As far as they knew, I was getting discharged in the next like 12 hours. So my mom is especially getting very frustrated, and she is like, I think she goes out, and Dan goes out when he finds out that they won't let me eat again. It was so cute. I've like rarely seen him this worked up over something, but he was like, I'm calling them. And he calls them and he's like, what is going on? And they were like, the doctor's gonna come talk to you soon. It was actually my reproductive endocrinologist who called. And so from my clinic, which is in a suburb 30 minutes away, and she says, I think it's right in front of them and they are just ignoring the signs. I think it's your ectopic pregnancy. I don't want them to discharge you, so I'm going to come in and I'm going to do this surgery myself. Thank goodness for my reproductive endocrinologist.
She's great.
Yeah, she is really great. I don't know what would have happened without her. I think literally she had been monitoring what was happening, and she saw them lift the NPO, and she saw that they were going to discharge me, and she said, no.
Yeah.
That's not going to happen.
And what would have happened is we would have come home, you would have had the pain again, you would have been right back in the emergency room.
Yeah, or it would have ruptured. Yeah. So she came in, they prepped me for surgery. At this point, I think only Dan was allowed back with me.
During that part, yeah.
And then he had to leave, and they take me back to surgery, and I am so scared. I'm so sad. I just couldn't believe how much this had continued to escalate. So this is the third time we are dealing with this pregnancy. Mm-hmm. I still cannot believe what a process we went through to like get some closure on this. So
she gets knocked out, put under, and they start doing the operation. They said it wouldn't take very long, mm-hmm. about an hour.
And this, I'm completely out. I don't have a lot of concepts.
By then, I'm eating the dinner she never got to eat the night before, and I'm hanging out in the waiting room with her parents as we're just kind of waiting to see what happens. We weren't too concerned that the surgery would go badly. It's laparoscopic, so they go in with a very thin video camera and a little blade on the end.
I had three incisions, so one on each hip and then one right in my belly button.
Her doctor did it, and she said, while I'm in there, I'm going to check out everything that I can just to make sure in case this isn't, an ovarian ectopic or whatever it is, mm-hmm. I'm going to find it. I'm going to see it, and I'm going to take it out.
Yeah, and she was going to check for ulcerative colitis, too, because that's what everybody kept saying it was.
Yep, so about an hour later, they tell us that Melissa's done, she's doing well, but waking up slowly, and that the doctor was going to come talk to us, mm-hmm. her parents and me. So she came in, and she showed us a picture of what the cause was, and she was like, I was right. She was like, I'm really glad it turned out I was right. She was like, I didn't want to be pushing for this surgery if it was unnecessary, mm-hmm. but in the end, it was ectopic. It was a tubal ectopic pregnancy, so it was in the fallopian tube, it wasn't in the ovary.
But it was so large that it was covering my ovary when they were looking at it in the ultrasound.
Every time they did any kind of test to see what was wrong, they kept seeing that fallopian tube enlarged and about ready to burst instead of the ovary. And that's why the one tech had said it looks a little junky. Well, it wasn't an ovary at all. It was an enlarged ectopic pregnancy.
She said it was bigger than my uterus by the time they removed it. And Dan likened it to like a snake, because it's like this little fallopian tube and then the big, tissue ball of tissue and blood and stuff. So he said it's like when a snake swallows its dinner, and you can see it in there.
It was really, really obvious that it was not correct, and I mean, mm-hmm. I'm so glad our doctor pushed for that, and that she went in there, and that she's such a good surgeon too, and that mm-hmm. she could just take care of it because she knew what she was looking for. She got it out. She took out the whole tube. Melissa doesn't need them. And after that, I mean, Melissa was really having a hard time.
The pain management was hard. Yeah. I have very delirious moments of memory within that, which was basically just the nurse like waking me up being like, how's your pain, and being like, awful, it's bad, and her giving me more pain meds and different pain meds, and I just, it's such a weird fuzzy memory, but I do remember that.
It might have taken another half hour to an hour before they released her from the post-op room because she just wasn't managing her pain at all.
Yeah.
And then they wheeled her up to the room again, and we both just conked out and slept. I mean, they gave you a lot of pain meds, and
yeah, I took a bunch of pain meds, and I was out. That's like the next few nights were the best sleep I've ever gotten in my life. I have real bad insomnia, and it was awesome.
Yeah, she slept, and they wake her up, but she kept falling back asleep, and then the next morning they're checking her pain levels, they're making sure she's doing all right, and she was.
And finally, I got to order food, and I ordered the same omelet that I had ordered the day before and had been dreaming of for the last day.
Didn't you only eat like half of it?
Yeah, I only ate half because it was the first thing I'd eaten in 2 days, and my stomach was just not quite ready for it, but oh my gosh, few foods have tasted better than that, like half a hospital omelet, because I was so hungry.
It was such a surreal 2 days, starting from when we raced back from that dinner with all our parents to the hospital, ending that morning, and just feeling like I'd lost the time somewhere. Like it had just been gone, and all of these crazy things had happened.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, eventually they discharged you later that day. I mean, it's not a huge surgery, so they sent her home, and oh my gosh, every pothole we hit or every
driving
bump
home
in the road,
was brutal.
she was just like, because
I was in a lot of pain.
The incisions were just fresh. I mean, ultimately, you recovered perfectly from the whole situation.
Yep, I'm doing well physically now. Emotionally, we're getting there. I've been seeing a therapist. I think everyone should see a therapist, really, but don't try and go through this stuff on your own. It's really important to have a professional helping you through it, and it's a different way to process what's happened, and it is one of the most devastating things I've ever been through. It was emotionally, physically, mentally, spiritually exhausting and draining, and I just can't imagine having gone through that without Dan, without seeing a professional, without my family surrounding me.
And it's a big part of why we took a couple months off and have been waiting for our next transfer, just because we needed to recover. I need to recover. I mean, it's like it's traumatic, and I could see how much she had gone through for all that, and we had all those hopes and dreams of a baby, and it ended, and then you can't just bounce back. So we're very hopeful for our future transfers. We haven't given up, and we have.
Yeah, we're going into some testing now so that we have more answers and can prepare better for our next transfer. And we'll kind of do some videos about those tests. I think they're really, really interesting, and I think they're pretty new, so a lot of people don't know about them yet, at least a lot of the people I talk to about it. So we'd love to share that information with you guys.
Thank you so much for watching. We really appreciate all the comments and the likes and the subscribes. It feels so good to be able to share these things and have other people make use of them and learn from them, and just be able to get them off our chest and be able to tell our story. So we'll see you next time. Stay tuned. Our next video will come out next Monday.
Have a good week.